Welcome back to HSC AMAs. I'm Julia Nimchinsky, joined by Rebecca Pisatano, and today we couldn't be more excited to feature one of our HSC coaches officially. And I wanted to say CXS consulting coaches. Is it CXS consulting? HSC?
Oh, it's SXS, but it was lack of any other better acronyms when making an LLC. So not a very important nomenclature.
I'm hearing my echo.
We
Can you-
aren't, so don't worry.
Sounds good over here.
Yeah, you sound great to
awesome.
us. So, Stephen, we have an AMA, Ask Me Anything. We have so many questions from our community. We're just going to fire them at you and
Please.
have you respond. We won't be responding to you because we're going to try to get as many questions as possible in. So I'll start.
Okay, let's go.
All right, here we go. What's more effective in the early stage, inbound or outbound?
Outbound, 1000%. I'll give you the shortest elaboration possible on that is outbound always works when you do it right. And it's the only channel that you can control most of the variables. You can't necessarily get the outputs right, but you can control all the top and all the throughputs. In fact, like even in Interseller, which was the first time I did like any 0 to 1 kind of stuff, we got to probably close to about 2.5 million in ARR in a few years. And that was still 85, almost 90% just through outbound. I think most businesses quit. They either get started too late or they quit too early on how close to 100% focus they should be there.
What's the secret to finding product market fit?
Yeah, the secret to finding product market fit is a lot of conversations. Like your calendar should be, especially if you're the first person doing it and the only one doing it, whether that's a founder, whether you're kind of coming in and picking up from, maybe like a friends and family group of customers, you got to try to shoot for, no joke, 40 new calls in a week if you can. You want to be so tired every day with like 5 or 6 hours of back-to-backs. And the reason is you just all you have are hypotheses early, right? And it helps if you have this really great story where like it's founder market fit, right? That's going to help you a lot. But if you don't have that, you have a hypothesis, you go in and you tell a strategic narrative to the folks that you're pitching, you maybe have something that you can demo or at least like an MVP that has some value, and you're just not really going to know what you have until you have 100 conversations and 30 customers going through it. So it's really just brute force for a while. And then you need to, lean into any sort of pattern recognition you get early.
Question for me, based on your experience, what is the number one mistake founders are making most often? And what was your biggest mistake when it comes to scaling from 0 to infinity?
I think the biggest mistake founders make is they don't get out of the way early enough, which is very tempting. Or it's kind of a cop-out because they're the two sides of the same blade, but they either put someone in place or they just don't let the operator that they're asking to do all the work kind of feed up to them and let them make some strategic decisions, or they throw somebody into the fire. This is probably more common where there's like 10 customers that maybe aren't even they're too differentiated for anything to be there, and then say, oh, we need to have 100 in a quarter. And you're a salesperson, so here you go, you can do it. So some combination of those two things. One usually slows growth by over limiting somebody who has something to work with and just is being micromanaged. The other more common is they don't want to do it and they think that there's just some sales magician who can kind of come in without a whole lot of initial signals that they can lean into. I think the biggest mistakes I've made at this stage were hiring full-time sales development reps for an internal role when we hadn't really proven it out enough. And the problem with that is, unless you have decent, even low, but it still needs to be like 5 figures in ACV that you're closing pretty consistently, even if it's as low as like 18 or 20%. It's really hard to make the CAC make sense when you bring somebody in who's going to be a fully burdened SDR. And when you're brand new and you have no brand recognition, you've got no tooling really, you've got no case studies, you're going to get somebody pretty junior. So you're going to overpay. You're not really going to be able to coach them because you have so much to do. And you really can only give them like 1 quarter to figure it out often. And it's just not a good setup. And I did that twice, actually. In fact, I had a VA being SDR that worked so well for me, just running like my sort of SOPs. I've had this happen a couple of times, that strangely enough, bringing in a full-time internal SDR actually performed worse. And I've seen this happen a lot. I think it's more on the leadership, not really nailing like the personnel management piece, and then also not really being super conservative on like their, CAC to LTV and their payback periods for that new hire. And that really starts to drag down, your growth ability and your burn when you mess that up early.
Very interesting. And one more question that kind of dovetails into this. When do you know that this is the time has come to hire, and what role would you hire? Are we talking about, a full cycle rep, Renaissance rep, or is it somebody like an SDR?
Yeah, great question. I think the couple ways to think about it. I think honestly, the founder should probably be doing sales up until, I think, the earliest they can really back out of it is maybe like 5, at least where I've seen it work, is once you get to maybe like 5K in MRR, if you're doing something that's like, sub $200 per month per seat. I think at that point, you probably have enough that you can hire somebody to come in and do the work. But then from the founder's perspective, whenever you bring in, whether it's just a rep, whether it's like a senior person who's managing a couple of reps that you started to manage yourself, you need to see them, they need to provide some lift in that first quarter. You pick the metric, right? Any of the 4 major like sales velocity levers is probably a good place to look. In that way, you're not just so focused on, say, revenue, which is maybe a little bit harder to control directly in 90 days. But there should be some lift. There should be more pipeline. The deal sizes should be bigger. They should be closing faster. The deal, pick anything like that. And then personally, now I definitely am really big on hiring 2 if I can. I'd rather hire 2 reps, AEs who can do full cycle selling. And I'd rather hire 2 of them and fire 1 really fast. If it's, if we're, say, even 6 weeks in and it's just not, there's no sign of life, it's not super comfortable. I've had to do that once or twice, but usually can go with your gut. Like the data is going to tell you a little bit of a leading indicator of things, but you probably already have had a gut reaction after the first few weeks of whether you think it's going to work. And I usually say, just lean into that. The vast majority of the times, you're not going to make a wrong decision, even if it's an uncomfortable one.
How do you crack into the first accounts and convert your first big paying customers?
Discounts are really, really helpful as like antithetical to selling as that is. But you kind of got to think like your first customers, you're going to win them 2 ways, really. Like you're gonna get them excited because you're pitching a vision, right? And you're pitching this journey that you're going on, and you are getting them excited to be a part of it. So you're going after like a bleeding edge type of early adopter, whether you're some super cutting edge tech that they just want to be involved in, or you're sticking it to like a hated mutual enemy like big banking or like health insurance. I'm sure like there's lots of big mutual monsters that you can slay together. But right, that's not going to get them to pay $100 a month per seat if that's where your like pricing needs to be when you've got nobody, and that's not valuable for you either. You really shouldn't be optimizing for revenue early. You need to be in this iteration cycle as quick as possible so that you can learn from the people who are actually putting the product in your hands, or you're getting it into their hands. So be willing, I think, to discount, 80% possibly, get them into, as long of deals as possible. Maybe say, hey, this long term for us to keep building this for you is going to need to be at a higher price. We're going to give it to you for 80% off for a year so that we can work really closely together for it. And I think that's honestly the best way to do it. But like, again, the pricing's not going to matter if they don't want to go on the journey, right? A lot of people aren't just going to pay a discount for something they don't want or don't believe in or don't want to support.
Where would you prioritize your efforts for an early stage startup when wanting to attract early adopters for a SaaS subscription service? This goes on a little bit longer. What are the top sales methodologies you follow in your day-to-day activities? And what are the sales tools you absolutely find necessary? What do you think is missing and could make your life easier?
Okay, cool. Let's start at the beginning there. I think the best thing that you can do is so there's a really good, even if a bit dated, I always go through the Nailing a Niche workbook from Predictable Revenue. Just Google it. It takes you to like a HubSpot PDF. If you have another method, great. I'm really agnostic to it, but I think it's really important to start with some sort of framework. And if you have no customers, you can just pick your lookalike and just make it up what you think they would look and sound like. And then just start with those ICPs and do what I said earlier and just honestly get as many conversations going as you can. How do I do that? I mean, my major tool is I think if you put, like theoretically or hypothetically tied a hand behind my back or two, I think I could do perfectly well if I only had Sales Navigator. That's because it's a messaging platform, it's a researching platform. There is some, quasi like automation or, more scalable things you can do with manual processes there. I think everything else is nice, and you can argue, you need better data platforms than that. You could have more intricate messaging tooling. You probably want a really good CRM. But honestly, like when I was just at Keep for the first year, getting us to a major milestone to raise, we did everything with a Notion database as a CRM, and we only did LinkedIn outreach. We tried cold email, but we were reaching out to Canadians. Really difficult place to do cold email. We had such a large TAM in this like small SMB sector that, if there's 3 million folks we could reach out to, we just didn't really think that calling was going to work as well early on. So we did some really unsexy brute force LinkedIn automation, and it worked really well. So that's kind of what I've always leaned on. Let's see, what was the follow-on question midway through the rest of those? I think I got like 2/3 of the way through that question.
Yeah, top sales methodologies
Okay.
and anything that's missing that could make your life easier.
Right. Okay. So top sales methodologies. So I'm a big John Kaplan fan from Force Management. So their whole they have something called like Commanding the Message, which is a really great training to go through. I've literally ingested every free material I can get from them or podcasts or something, and it's just really, really great like first principles thinking about relationship building and creating like demonstrating value and building use cases and attaching what you're doing to a mission critical business outcome, quantifying it. They do that in tandem with MEDDIC. So I'm also a really big MEDDIC fan. I think you can reduce MEDDIC to 2 or 3 acronym letters as well. And that's really going to help you, mostly because I like the process that it forces a lot more rigor, I think, in the way that you're examining deals and it keeps it unified in a way that more simplistic things like BANT or maybe too there's too much subjectivity to. So it's always really helped me work with reps and objectively go through, okay, if we're stuck in this stage and we know what kind of exit criteria is required and we're missing it, then we can make realistic strategies of how to get it, or just leave that deal aside and focus on something better. So those are my two favorite. And then I was trained on Spin and Challenger early. I honestly haven't revisited them very much. It's kind of like ingrained. I think you have to be willing to, Spin's a really useful framework, and I'm sure everyone's aware of that. And then challenging as well, like, especially if you're selling pretty high up, or you're selling something that's maybe very new to market, you're going to have to challenge a lot of people's existing ideas of status quo or why things have been done a certain way. And what I'm most excited for is seeing how, in this 1 year, we've had such a Cambrian explosion of AI-based tooling come out of this first public iteration of OpenAI. Massive announcements yesterday on their dev day. People should check that out. But I think we're getting really close to some of the like one pane of glass type of stuff that Justin talks about in tech-powered sales. And I think we're going to see probably in the next 12 to 18 months a lot of really cool stuff where AI is not going to be this generative email writer, or where I see a lot of like calling tools doing it wrong, is they want to give you real-time stuff to distract you and how to answer. Instead, you're going to rock up to your call 10, 15 minutes before, and you're going to have this whole battle card of who you're talking to, what the assumed pains are. It'll maybe talk about other deals that you've closed, won, or closed lost that are relevant. So you have stories to go through, maybe even quotes. Then when you close, then when the call's over, it's just going to automatically get transcribed, and not only transcribed, but pushed to all the proper fields in your CRM. It's going to update the staging. It's going to rank it for you. It's going to ping your manager and put a specific, thing you should cover in your next pipeline reveal. That kind of stuff is what gets me really excited, because these are the things that really good reps who don't do the processes but do the selling really well innately are going to just get that much better. But it's going to take a lot of the B minus B players who are just missing some good processes and consistency, and it's going to make everybody go up a full level or so.
How do you make the leap from enterprise seller to independent seller?
That is a great question. And I'm going to assume independent seller means like leaving, having a W-2 and then selling on your own, or do they mean yeah? Losing your job a lot helps. In all seriousness, though, like I think and this gets talked about ad nauseum on LinkedIn from people, but the average tenure of even a VP of sales has been like 18 months, give or take. And that's been pretty standard for the last 7 or 8 years. That's just not a lot of job security. And you put a lot on the line when you choose to work for a company, especially if it's earlier. You might inherit a team you can't really do anything with. You might have been told the product is somewhere it's not. And so for me, it just got really clear in larger corporate selling at like Square that I just didn't really jive with being in 1,000+ person companies. There's a whole lot of things you need to do to be successful. Then go to the other end and work from 0 to 1. You can do a whole lot of work and be really pivotal in the success, but you still are, the CEO still decides every day, right? So at the end of the day, the only way you're ever going to really be able to own that is if you're finding some way to control the delivery, right? And the product or service itself. I think the best thing to do beforehand is to, I think you don't need like 10 years of experience or anything specific, but I think that you need to feel confident that you can tell a compelling story with your experience. And it helps if you maybe have 2 of them that feel the same and have the same similar outcome. That's going to allow for you to just tell that story and it's going to help you find people who that story is valuable to. If you have that, that's enough to just have conversations and kind of figure out, let them tell you what about you sounds unique and special that they want to pay for and work with. But you know, it's really kind of like you'll feel it. It's kind of like when people say things like, when you meet the one, you'll know when you know. And if you don't, then you probably don't have the baseline to go out and confidently, you know, sell yourself or pitch being a valuable person that they should have in their fold.
I'll selfishly ask another question for me. It's just a really rare treat to have somebody who actually is as qualified in founder-led sales and in selling in general. And so I'm super curious your thoughts about building a sales process.
Yeah, tell me,
When
tell me more.
when is the best time to transition from kind of a, chaotic early stage selling into something more organized? When do you know? How do you do it? What's your thinking?
Yeah. So I am I like to think I'm a smart guy, but I mostly just take other people's more brilliantly articulated concepts and roll them up into my own as much as I can. I think the best person who thinks about this really well from a really like actionable and logical framework is Mark Roberge. And I encourage everyone, maybe put it in like the show notes or something. It's called The Science of Scaling, and it's by Stage 2 Capital. If you just Google that, it should also take you like a 50 or 60 page PDF. He very clearly breaks down 3 different phases of scaling and kind of like more overarching what you're trying to do. And really the first 2 are mostly learning. One is like a product market fit learning phase. Right after that, stage 2 is really a go-to-market fit phase. Once you have those nailed, then you're in a proper like, great, this is just pure unit economic scaling. We will throw as much money as we can at this point because we've gotten out of the product market fit. We know we have a way to go to market efficiently. And if that's, at a put in $1, get $2 back methodology, we will pour infinite cash basically until that gap gets too small and adjust as we go. So I would take a look at that. And a lot of the really interesting things around it are focused on like product market fit as a definition or as defined by customer retention. And you have product market fit enough to start, moving more aggressively into experimenting with go-to-market at scale when you can start predictably saying, hey, we know that if customer does A, B, and C within Z time, they are going to be retained in 6 months and possibly be growing in 12. That's the type of things that like, you'll start to get a feel for that. But if you feel like you don't objectively know it, that's when you need to put a process in place so that you can measure that stuff. Then once you start measuring it, you can start to move on into other areas of either the sales org or other parts of the business, because now you'll have this, it can be very rudimentary, but you want to start when you need to start predicting reasonably well. If you can't do that, it's because you probably don't have a process that's unified enough to make predictions.
Rebecca.
We're nearing the end of our time. So, Stephen, my question to you is, the people that are watching, if they want to book some sessions with you at Hardscale Exchange, who are you most excited to work with?
Oh, that's a really good question. Okay, so day to day, I think what I love doing day to day in like my consulting is I try to go after founders, usually, probably what you'd think of like a seed or even just before Series A type of level, because it's really energetic working with founders, and they really need help. When they realize that they need help, it's really fun. It's really great synergy. And I put this in my bio, if you feel like you're a romantic or a pirate, then we should talk. And if you don't know what that is, read my bio. There's a little blurb in there, and then go Google romantics and pirates with Jason Lemkin. If any of that resonates, we're gonna kick ass.
Thank you so much, Stephen. It's been an amazing session. Everybody go to Stephen's profile. We'll promote it on LinkedIn. We'll promote it all social media channels. Sirens in Tel Aviv. I'm so sorry. I have to wrap it up. It was an amazing session. See you soon.
Thanks.